What's the best way to reduce? Eat plenty or starve yourself? Starve yourself? Wrong. A half-empty stomach causes hunger tantrums. Now with the RDX full stomach reducing plan, you fill your stomach, avoid hunger tantrums, lose excess weight naturally and fast. And safe, pleasant-tasting RDX tablets contain no dangerous drugs, no hormones. So if your doctor has told you to lose weight, get RDX at your drugstore now.
For over a century, society has told women how they should look, and every decade the rules change. We've gone from idolizing the soft curves of Marilyn Monroe to worshipping the exaggerated proportions of social media stars like Kim Kardashian. And what's worse, these ideals have gone from difficult to dangerous. Corsets have become plastic surgery, advertisements have become filters, and the relentless message remains the same. Your body is never good enough. So how did we get here? Why is the female body constantly treated like a trend? And what does this obsession say about us? To understand, we need to rewind 100 years and trace back the history of changing body ideals and the industries that profit from them. Chapter 1. The Gibson Girl, Corsets, and the Birth of the Flapper. Our story begins in the early 1900s with the Gibson Girl, the first truly mass-marketed beauty ideal. Created by illustrator Charles Dana Gibson, the Gibson Girl was seen as the epitome of femininity. Tall, curvy, and impossibly elegant. She had a tiny cinched waist, broad hips, a full bust, and a graceful S-shaped posture. This wasn't just an artistic style. It was a standard that women were expected to emulate. But make no mistake, achieving the Gibson Girl look was anything but natural. The Gibson Girl relied on one key tool, the corset. And corsets shaped women's bodies into that desired hourglass silhouette, but they came at a cost. Women wore these constrictive garments for hours a day, lacing them so tightly that they compressed their ribs and internal organs. Doctors even coined the term corset disease to describe the health problems caused by these contraptions, which included difficulty breathing, fainting, and even permanent damage to the spine and organs. But society turned a blind eye because a tiny waist was seen as a symbol of beauty and status. And the corset wasn't the only way women tried to fit the mold. Strange and often dangerous weight loss fads began to emerge. One particularly shocking trend, tapeworm pills. Yes, women were encouraged to swallow pills that contained live tapeworms, which would supposedly eat the food inside their stomachs, helping them lose weight effortlessly. It's almost like today's Ozempic or something. And these pills were advertised as a miracle cure, but they often led to severe malnutrition, infections, and even death. If tapeworms sound extreme, consider the other bizarre weight loss tools of the time. Vibrating machines promised to shake off unwanted fat despite having no scientific backing. Arsenic tonics and slimming powders claimed to suppress appetite, but these so-called miracle cures were often poisonous, putting women's lives at risk. And the Gibson Girl was defined by beauty at all costs, with women literally reshaping their bodies to fit societal expectations. But by the 1920s, everything changed. The First World War had upended traditional gender roles, and women were beginning to embrace new freedoms. Along with this cultural shift came a brand new beauty ideal, the flapper. The 1920s marked the birth of the flapper, a stark rejection of Gibson Girl's corseted curves. Flappers embodied rebellion and freedom, breaking away from Victorian restrictions with short, bobbed hair, loose dresses, and a boyish figure. Icons like Clara Bow and Louise Brooks popularized this youthful look, which favored flat chests, narrow hips, and long, slim legs. This new beauty ideal wasn't just about fashion, it symbolized a broader cultural shift. For the first time, women were smoking, drinking, and dancing in public. The flapper wasn't just a style, it was a statement. But even this seemingly liberating ideal came with its own set of pressures. To achieve the flapper's boyish figure, women went to drastic lengths. Corsets were swapped for flatteners, undergarments that bound their chest to minimize curves. Crazy to think they wore things to actually make their chest flatter, and extreme dieting became the norm, with the women often eating little more than a grapefruit or celery to maintain their slim frames. 20s. Although the flapper was celebrated for her carefree spirit, the reality was that this ideal was just as restrictive as the ones that came before. Women traded one impossible standard for another, proving that even when society changes, its control over women's bodies remains. And Chapter 2, Hollywood Glamour and the Rise of the Starlet, the 1930s and 40s. By the 30s and 40s, the flapper's boyish figure had faded, replaced by a new ideal shaped by Hollywood's golden age. This was the era of the starlet, a glamorous, sophisticated woman who epitomized sensuality and elegance. For the first time, film stars became the ultimate beauty icons, and their images were beamed into homes across the world, setting the standard for how women should look. This new ideal wasn't just about the body, it was about the whole package. Porcelain skin, sculpted brows, red lips, and perfectly coiffed hair. Women everywhere wanted to emulate the allure of stars like Greta Garbo, Jean Harlow, and Marlene Dietrich. But it wasn't just about looking glamorous. It was about exuding an effortless femininity that bellied the work and sacrifice behind the scenes. Take Greta Garbo, for instance. Her chiseled cheekbones and sultry gaze made her one of the most iconic stars of the 30s. Women tried to emulate her mysterious allure by using makeup to contour their faces long before contouring became a TikTok trend. Then there was Jean Harlow, the original blonde bombshell. Her platinum blonde hair became so popular that women flocked to salons for harsh bleaching treatments, often damaging their scalps and their hair in the process. But here's the thing, these stars didn't achieve their looks naturally. Studios controlled every aspect of their image. Actresses were often put on strict diets, forced into grueling exercise routines, and even subjected to plastic surgery to fit the mold of the perfect woman. For example, Marlene Dietrich reportedly had her back molars removed to create sharper cheekbones and enhance her angular face. Imagine the pain and pressure of having to alter your body just to stay relevant. And then there was Rita Hayworth, who became the ultimate symbol of the 40s Hollywood glamour. She was so influential that her iconic red hair was dubbed the love goddess look. But what most people don't know was that Hayworth underwent an intense beauty transformation to fit Hollywood standards. Her hairline was painfully removed by electrolysis to give her a higher forehead, and her naturally dark hair was bleached and dyed repeatedly to achieve the perfect shade of red. Studios even prescribed her a rigid diet and exercise routine to maintain her hourglass figure. Every inch of her appearance was carefully curated to feed the fantasy of the perfect woman. The pressure to look perfect didn't just apply to movie stars. During World War II, women were stepping into traditionally male roles, working in factories, building airplanes, and supporting the war effort. But even while doing this crucial work, society told them they still needed to look beautiful. Magazines of the time featured ads for waterproof mascara and bulletproof lipstick, marketed as tools to help women stay glamorous on the job. The message was clear: no matter how much you're contributing to the war effort, your appearance still matters. It was a fine line between being strong and capable while maintaining femininity, a juggling act that left many women feeling inadequate. Even hairstyles became part of the beauty ideal. Veronica Lake's famous peekaboo hair, sleek waves that fell seductively over one eye, became an instant trend. Women across country copied her look, despite the fact that it was widely impractical, especially for those working in factories. In fact, her hairstyle was so dangerous that the US government eventually launched a campaign asking women to tie their hair back to prevent industrial accidents. Chapter 3, Marilyn Monroe and the Golden Age of Curves, the 1950s. The 1950s marked the height of glamour and the ultimate celebration of curves. After the hardship of World War II, the post-war boom ushered in a return to traditional gender roles, and with it came a beauty ideal that centered around femininity and being domestic. Women were encouraged to embody the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and of course, the perfect body. At the center of this ideal was Marilyn Monroe. She wasn't just a movie star, she was a cultural phenomenon. With her hourglass figure, full hips, and radiant confidence, Marilyn became the ultimate symbol of 1950s beauty. Her curves were celebrated in a way that felt refreshing compared to the androgynous looks of the 20s and 30s. But Marilyn's beauty wasn't effortless. Studios dictated every aspect of her appearance, from her hair color to her weight. While many think of Marilyn as naturally voluptuous, she faced constant pressure to maintain her figure, and her weight fluctuated through her career. She reportedly followed strict diets to keep her curves just right, not too slim, but not too full. And then there were the beauty rituals. Marilyn was known to use Vaseline under her foundation to give her skin that dewy glow, and slept with multiple layers of cream on her face to maintain her youthful appearance. Her iconic platinum blonde hair, it required weekly bleaching sessions that left her scalp sore and her hair brittle. Despite her radiant persona, Marilyn's beauty came with pain and sacrifice, proof that even the world's most celebrated woman wasn't free from the crushing expectations placed on her appearance. But Marilyn wasn't alone. Elizabeth Taylor, with her striking violet eyes and regal demeanor, represented a more elegant version of 50s beauty. She was glamorous, poised, and utterly unattainable. Then there was Jane Mansfield, often seen as Marilyn's rival, who exaggerated the hourglass figure even further with plunging necklines and impossibly cinched waists. Sophia Loren brought a European twist to the decade's ideal. Her fiery confidence and natural curves captured the world's attention, proving that beauty came in many forms, though always within the limits of the hourglass ideal. Achieving the 50s ideal wasn't just about genetics, it required a lot of work, and women were bombarded with products and advice on how to shape their bodies to fit the mold. Girdles were a must-have, cinching the waist to create that coveted hourglass silhouette. Cone bras were also essential, enhancing the bust to create the bullet bra look that defined the decade. Women were constantly told to diet and maintain their figures, but here's the twist. In the 50s, thinness wasn't the goal. If you were too skinny, you were considered undesirable. In fact, advertisements for products like Weight On promised to help women gain weight in the right places to achieve the soft, curvaceous look of the time. The pressure to be the perfect woman didn't stop at the body. The 1950s ideal was deeply tied into gender roles. Women were expected to embody domesticity, glamour, and sexual appeal all at once. Advertisements sold the idea that woman's beauty wasn't just for herself, it was her duty to maintain her looks for her husband and family. This ideal left little room for individuality and imperfection. Women who didn't naturally fit the mold of Marilyn or Elizabeth were left feeling inadequate, and the tools they were given to fix themselves were often caused more harm than good. Girdles were restrictive, bras were uncomfortable, and extreme dieting left many women malnourished. And while the 50s is often romanticized as a glamorous era, the pressure on women to conform to these ideals was immense. Even Marilyn Monroe, the decade's most celebrated icon, struggled with self-image. She once said, "I'm not interested in money, I just want to be wonderful." But the truth is, no matter how wonderful she was never allowed to be enough. Not by Hollywood, not by society, and not even by herself. Chapter 4. Twiggy, Mod Fashion and the Age of Thinness, the 1960s. The 1960s brought a seismic shift in beauty standards. The curves of the 50s were out, and a new drastically different ideal emerged. Thin, youthful, and almost androgynous, kind of similar to the 20s, and this was the era of Twiggy, the British teenager who became the face of the mod movement and revolutionized the fashion world. Twiggy's boyish figure, wide eyes, and short pixie-cut hair embodied everything the 60s beauty ideal represented. At just 16 years old, she was nicknamed the world's first supermodel, and her rise marked the beginning of the fashion industry's obsession with thinness. But Twiggy wasn't the only icon of the decade, and the pressures to fit this mold reached far beyond the catwalk. Jean Shrimpton, another major figure of the 60s, had a slightly softer take on the era's ideal. Known as the shrimp, she popularized the miniskirt and helped bring mod fashion to the mainstream. Her long legs and delicate features became the blueprints for models to come. And then there was Audrey Hepburn, whose petite frame and sophisticated style made her a timeless icon. While her elegance felt effortless, her naturally slim figure set an unrealistic standard for millions of women who tried to emulate her diet and appearance. Audrey once claimed she owned her figure to years of malnutrition as a child in World War II, hardly a sustainable beauty routine, yet her body became the goal for many. On the other end of the spectrum, Brigitte Bardot brought a sultry, carefree energy to the 60s ideal. While still slim, Bardot's appeal came from her natural curves and sex appeal. Her messy tousled hair, pouty lips were a sharp contrast to Twiggy's androgynous look, showing that even the same era, beauty standards could take on different forms depending on the geography and media portrayal. But make no mistake, thinness was the dominating standard of the 60s. For many women, this meant turning to extreme methods to achieve a slender frame. Diet pills, often laced with amphetamines, became a popular solution. These miracle drugs suppressed the appetite but came with severe side effects like addiction, anxiety, anxiety and heart problems. Fad diets also exploded during this time. One of the most notorious was the so-called sleeping beauty diet, where women were encouraged to sleep for extended periods to avoid eating. And for those who couldn't rely on sleeping pills, there were vibrating belts and exercise contraptions that promised to melt away fat without effort despite being completely ineffective. The fashion industry also played a massive role in cementing thinness as the ultimate standard. Designers like Mary Quant created the bold geometric styles of the era, which were designed to hang on a slim, straight-line body. The new look required less bust, fewer curves, and narrow hips, qualities that excluded most women naturally. Magazines and advertisements reinforced this narrative. They depicted models with impossibly long legs, tiny waists, and flawless skin, creating a beauty ideal that felt more like a scientific experiment than reality. And Twiggy herself once said, "I was just naturally thin, and that's how I was." But for millions of women, her body became the gold standard, despite being unattainable for most people. Teenage girls especially felt the pressure to conform, with a lot of eating disorders starting to rise because of this during this decade. And the 60s were so pivotal that it marked the beginning of the global obsession with thinness, a standard that would dominate beauty ideals for decades to come. In the late 60s, counterculture movements like the hippies began to push back against mainstream beauty standards, embracing natural, effortless looks. But even this rejection of societal norms often came with unspoken pressures. Being naturally beautiful, thin, and carefree still wasn't as effortless as it seemed. Chapter 5. The supermodel era and the rise of fitness culture. The 70s and 80s marked yet another shift in beauty standards. The curves of the 50s and the extreme thinness of the 60s gave way to a new ideal: athleticism. Women were encouraged to be fit, toned, and healthy, but not too muscular. It was a time when physical fitness became not just a lifestyle, but a crucial part of beauty culture. This era was defined by two competing influences: the natural sun-kissed beauty of the 70s and the polished supermodel glamour of the 80s and 90s. Both ideals created their own pressures, with women feeling the need to sculpt their bodies into something that looked effortless but required endless effort behind the scenes. The 1970s brought a more relaxed, natural look to the forefront, influenced by hippie culture and the growing environmental movement. Farrah Fawcett became the face of this era, her radiant smile, feathered hair, and lean athletic body. Women everywhere tried to copy her look, her golden California glow, leading the rise to tanning trends and sunbathing as a beauty ritual. And another icon was Bo Derek, whose braided hair and athletic physique in the film 10 cemented her status as the ultimate beach goddess. The 70s celebrated a more natural, effortless beauty, but even this ideal came with its own challenges. Women still felt the pressure to be slim and toned, and crash diets remained popular. The grapefruit diet, the cabbage soup diet were just few of the fads that promised rapid weight loss, often at the expense of health. The 1980s and the rise of fitness culture brought a new kind of beauty ideal: toned, athletic, and disciplined. Jane Fonda became a household name with her workout tapes, encouraging women to exercise not just for health, but for the perfect body. Her tagline, "Feel the burn," became a mantra for millions. The aerobics boom wasn't just about physical fitness, it was about achieving a very specific look: long, lean legs, a flat stomach, and firm but not bulky muscles. Women flocked to gyms and aerobics classes in bright colored spandex, sweating it out in the name of beauty. But fitness wasn't just all about movement, it was a billion-dollar industry. Products like the Thigh Master and ab rollers promised to target problem areas, and infomercials pushed women to buy gadgets that claimed to melt away fat without effort. Meanwhile, diet culture was thriving. With the rise of low-fat and calorie-restricted meals, magazines ran endless articles about how to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks or get your bikini body fast, reinforcing the ideal that and fitness were ultimate goals. The supermodel takeover, the 80s and 90s. While fitness culture dominated everyday life, the 80s and the 90s also saw the rise in the supermodel. Women like Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, and Linda Evangelista became global icons, defining beauty for a generation. These women were seen as the epitome of perfection: tall, slim, and toned, with symmetrical features and flawless skin. They weren't just models, they were celebrities, appearing on magazine covers and music videos and even in films. Their beauty felt aspirational but unattainable for most. But the 1990s brought a darker turn, the rise of the heroin chic, and it marked a shift back to the extreme thinness. Kate Moss became the face of this trend, with her waif-like frame and minimalist aesthetic dominating the fashion world. Heroin chic glamorized a frail, almost unhealthy look: thin bodies with visible collarbones and hollow cheeks became the standard. And this shift wasn't just about fashion, it reflected a broader cultural obsession with thinness that left many women feeling inadequate. The 70s, 80s, and 90s might have celebrated different versions of beauty, natural, athletic, or waif-like, but the underlying message was the same: your body was never good enough. Whether it was through diets, workout routines, or expensive products, women were told they had to work harder to achieve the perfect body. And while the supermodel era may feel like a distant memory, its influence is still felt today. The idea that beauty is something to be achieved through discipline, sacrifice, and often pain has never really gone away. And it's true, we look back and we complain about today, which is still bad, which I will get into, but if you think about every decade in the 20th century, there was always some extreme thing that women had to do. Chapter 6, the Kim Kardashian era and the social media body. In the 2000s and 2010s, curves made a major comeback, but this time they were exaggerated to extremes that were often impossible to achieve naturally. Leading the shift was Kim Kardashian, whose hourglass figure with its impossibly tiny waist, oversized hips, and full bust became the new beauty ideal. But unlike Marilyn Monroe's natural curves of the 50s, this modern version was a result of a carefully curated enhancements. With the rise of social media platforms like Instagram, these proportions quickly became the standard of beauty, setting off a wave of transformations that redefined not just beauty, but also the business of beauty itself. Kim Kardashian didn't just become famous, she created a new era of beauty standards. Her body became the focal point of her brand, influencing everything from fashion trends to fitness culture. The emphasis wasn't just on having curves, but on having curves in all the right places, with an almost cartoon-like tiny waist and dramatically exaggerated hips. This look wasn't just something most women could achieve naturally, it required interventions like the BBL, breast implants, and tiny waist trainers, tools that reshape the body into a new hyper-sexualized ideal. And the influence of this look spread far beyond Hollywood thanks to the rise of Instagram. Instagram wasn't just a platform for sharing photos, it became a marketplace for beauty standards. With filters like Facetune and curated feeds, influencers began showcasing highly edited versions of themselves that blurred the line between reality and fantasy. For many, this led the way to what's now known as the Instagram body, a sculpted hourglass figure with flat abs, large hips, and flawless skin. The platform didn't just amplify these ideals, it monetized them. Influencers promoted waist trainers, diet teas, and fitness programs, promising women they could achieve these bodies too, if they just worked hard enough. Of all the procedures tied to this new ideal was the Brazilian butt lift, or BBL. It became the most infamous procedure. BBLs involve transferring fat from one part of the body of the hips to the buttocks to create an exaggerated hourglass figure popularized by celebrities like Kim Kardashian. I wish Kim Kardashian and all her siblings would just admit that they had BBLs instead of lying to everyone. But the BBL isn't just one of the most sought after surgeries, it's one of the most dangerous. The procedure has an alarmingly high mortality rate compared to other cosmetic surgeries, with complications ranging from fat embolisms to infections. Despite this, demand for the BBL skyrocketed through the 2010s, thanks in part to social media's obsession with the Instagram body. While the BBL dominated headlines, it wasn't the only procedure on the rise. Lip fillers became a must-have accessories after Kylie Jenner debuted her dramatically fuller pout. Nose jobs, breast implants, and non-invasive treatments like Botox and fillers became part of everyday beauty routines, with women as young as the early 20s opting for these preventative procedures. What once felt taboo became completely normalized. Social media played a huge role in this shift, as influencers and celebrities openly documented their glow-ups and shared their surgical journeys. For many women, surgery no longer felt like a dramatic decision. It felt like the next step, keeping up with the beauty trends. This era marked a major turning point. The female body wasn't just being shaped, it was being sold. Beauty became a commodity in an entirely new way, as influencers profited off their transformations by selling products, procedures, and even access to their lifestyles. The message was clear: if you didn't have the perfect body, you could buy it, or at least least try to. But this emphasis on physical perfection would have a ripple effect that went far beyond surgery and fitness routines, creating an actual crisis that we're grappling today. Chapter 7. The Modern Beauty Crisis. Today we're living in what feels like the height of the beauty standard crisis. Technology has made it easier than ever to manipulate our appearances, both digitally and surgically. Social media, with its endless filters, editing apps, and curated perfection, has created a beauty ideal that isn't just unattainable. It's not even real. But this isn't just about aesthetics. It's about the mental toll this obsession with perfection is taking on us. How did we get to a point where millions of women are scrutinizing their own reflections, chasing a beauty standard designed to make us feel flawed? And let's take a closer look. In this modern era, filters have become the new makeup. With just a swipe, you can give yourself a smoother skin, fuller lips, and smaller nose, or even larger eyes. These editing apps allow you to reshape your entire body: thinner arms, smaller waist, and even longer legs. The problem is these tools create a distorted reality. They make it harder and harder to distinguish from what's real and what's fake. And for young women and girls growing up with these technologies, it's shaping their self-image in dangerous ways. And studies have shown that spending just minutes on Instagram can lower your self-esteem, especially for women. The endless stream of perfect images makes us hyper aware of our flaws, even when those images aren't real. And it's not just filters. Cosmetic surgery has exploded in popularity, especially among younger generations. Procedures that were once taboo are now openly discussed and celebrated on social media. Lip fillers, nose jobs, and Botox are routine procedure now for people in their early 20s. And let's not forget the BBL, which remains one of the most dangerous cosmetic procedures, and people are actually getting filler in their bum now, which is crazy. I mean, obviously the BBL to me is kind of crazy too. And it's still one of the most popular procedures among women to get this exaggerated proportions or the Instagram body. And the normalization of surgery isn't just about aesthetics, it's a symptom of a deeper problem. Women are being told that their natural bodies aren't enough. Every imperfection is now seen as something that can and should be fixed. And it's not just women with disposable incomes. Young girls are saving money or going into debt to afford these procedures, hoping that changing their appearance will bring them happiness and confidence and success. But more often than not, it leads to disappointment, pain, and even more insecurity. The impact of all of this goes far beyond physical changes. Social media is fueling a mental health crisis. Body dysmorphia, disorders, anxiety, and depression are all on the rise, especially amongst teenage girls. Studies show that more time we spend on apps like TikTok or Instagram, the more likely we're to feel dissatisfied with our bodies. And it's no wonder your feed is filled with flawless influencers who all seem to have the perfect life. It's easy to feel like you're not enough. Chapter 8. How do we break this cycle? So how do we break free from this toxic cycle? For one, we need to take a critical look at the media we consume. Beauty standards aren't just harmful, they're manufactured by industries designed to profit from us and our insecurities. The beauty industry thrives on telling us we're flawed. They sell us products and procedures and promises that really never deliver this perfection. And it's made by design, so you're always on the hunt for that next serum, that next plastic surgery procedure. And it starts by rejecting these standards. We need to celebrate diversity and different body shapes, stop giving in to all of this, and just be happy for what you have. And it's also about transparency. Some influencers are starting to share their unfiltered photos, which is good, exposing the truth behind all these flawless things, and that the people on top should be more open about things. And I feel like, not to point fingers, but the Kardashians are a lot to blame for all this. I mean, if you go to Kim Kardashian's Instagram now, there's a lot of these unrealistic photos of her showcasing her body, which looks like a cartoon character. And most importantly, you need to reclaim beauty in your own terms. Beauty should never be about meeting someone else's expectations. I think it's important just to be healthy and happy. And the female body has been shaped, scrutinized, commodified for over a century. So in many ways, this isn't new. I mean, it seems like it's really bad now, which it is, because in the past, we just had magazines and movies. But now everything's just completely gone extreme with social media. But from corsets to filters, from dieting fads to plastic surgery, the tools may have changed, but the message has stayed the same. We're not enough. But the truth is, we are. So let's rewrite the narrative. Let's stop chasing this perfection, start celebrating reality. Beauty is more than how we look. It's about who we are. And thank you for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video. It's interesting to go back to all these decades because there always was something, even if you think about corsets. But I bet 100 years from now, people are going to go look back at what we're doing now and think that it's extreme, kind of like how we look back at corsets and think how extreme and crazy they were back then. So hopefully things will change in the future instead of repeating the same cycle over and over again, because in many ways it seems like we've never really learned our lesson. All right, thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out some of my other videos.